In 1970, something extraordinary happened every time an American family walked into a grocery store. You could fill an entire cart with milk, eggs, bread, ground beef, vegetables, cereal, coffee, sugar, snacks, soap, laundry powder, everything you needed for a full week. And you walked out spending less than what a single fast food meal costs today. It sounds unbelievable now, almost like fiction. But back then, it wasn't shocking. It wasn't special. It wasn't rare. It was simply normal life. Families still have the old receipts tucked inside shoeboxes, taped into kitchen notebooks, or folded in the back of a recipe book. And when they look at those faded numbers today, even they can't believe how cheap everything used to be. Today, we're stepping back into that world. We're going to walk through a 1970 grocery store, aisle by aisle, price by price. Some of what you're about to hear will make you laugh. Some might make you angry, and some will feel like traveling back through your own childhood. Maybe you'll remember sitting in the car while your parents loaded the groceries. Maybe you'll remember pushing a squeaky cart with that one bad wheel. Maybe you'll remember the cashier manually typing every single number into the big clacking register. The sound of those metal keys hitting felt almost musical. And when the cash drawer slid open with a bell chime, it was part of the rhythm of everyday life. Imagine this for a moment. 1970. Nixon is in the White House. Houses are affordable. Gas is cheap. Cars have ashtrays and bench seats. And the average American earned around $6,000 a year. Today, $6,000 feels tiny, almost impossible. But $1 in 1970 was powerful. You could feel its weight when you held it. You knew exactly what it could buy. When you handed cash to a cashier, you felt the exchange. The money was real, the value was real, and the groceries you carried home reflected that. Grocery stores themselves were calmer places. The aisles were narrower. The shelves weren't stuffed with 50 versions of the same product. There were fewer choices, fewer distractions, and believe it or not, that simplicity actually made shopping easier. No self-checkout screens, no loyalty cards, no digital coupons, no flashing signs or price scanners. Every item had a small, crisp price label glued or stamped onto the packaging. You could read it instantly. And the cashier didn't scan barcodes, they typed everything manually. Click, click, each number entered by hand. If you lived through that time, you can still hear that rhythm. Most families paid in cash. Some paid by check. Credit cards existed, but using one at a grocery store was nearly unheard of. And because everything was paid by hand, people knew exactly what they spent. They tracked their weekly groceries mentally. Milk, bread, eggs, meat, they almost always landed near the same total. A typical family spent around $30 to $35 per week on groceries. Out of a roughly $119 weekly paycheck, that was about a quarter of the income. And while the percentage is surprisingly similar to today, the difference in what that money bought is staggering. So let's start with the item almost every family bought: weekly milk. In 1970, a gallon of whole milk cost 62 cents. Today, that same gallon averages around $4.29, a nearly 600% increase. Yet people protested about milk prices in 1970. There were small crowds gathering outside grocery stores because dairies wanted to raise the price by just 5 cents. Imagine people staging a protest today because milk went from $4.29 to $4.34. Instead, we quietly accept a 50-cent increase overnight without even thinking about it. And milk wasn't just bought at stores. Many families still had milk delivered to their doorstep in glass bottles. Early morning quiet, soft clinks of the bottles as the milkman arranged them. Kids running out in pajamas to bring them in. That small ritual is something most people today have never experienced. Bread was another staple. Loaf of Wonder Bread cost 24 cents. Not only was it cheap, it was larger than today's loaves. Back then, a standard loaf was 24 ounces. Today, a standard loaf is around 20 ounces. You were paying less and getting more. A mother in 1970 could walk into the store with $2.40 and walk out with 10 loaves of bread. Today, $2.40 might not even buy one slice of bread. If you think about how much shrinkflation has changed packaging. Eggs were another affordable staple. A dozen eggs cost 45 cents. A dozen averages nearly $4. Eggs were so cheap that people bought them in large quantities for breakfasts, baking, picnics, and holidays. And many didn't even buy them from the store. Someone in the neighborhood always had a small chicken coop. Kids used to run home with warm eggs straight from the hen house. Today, most children only know eggs from a refrigerated aisle under fluorescent lights. Ground beef tells one of the biggest stories of price change. 58 cents per pound. Today, that same pound costs over $5.60. Ground beef was the everyday workhorse of American meals: spaghetti, tacos, casseroles, chili, sloppy joes, meatloaf. Families didn't think twice about buying 3 or 4 pounds. Meat was not something people cut back on because of price. It was reliable and affordable. Today, people often treat ground beef like a luxury. Rising meat prices have changed weekly menus across America. Coffee has undergone one of the most dramatic cultural transformations. A 1-pound can of Folgers cost 91 cents. Today, that same pound is around $8.50. Back then, coffee wasn't a trend. It wasn't photographed for Instagram. It wasn't flavored, sweetened, or decorated. It was brewed in a percolator. It filled the house with a deep, warm smell every morning. And a 91-cent can lasted weeks. Today, 91 cents isn't even enough to buy a single sip of Starbucks. Cereal costs 33 cents for a full-sized box of cornflakes. Today, that box costs around $4.17. It's much smaller. In 1970, kids ate cereal every morning without breaking the family budget. Parents bought multiple boxes at once. 3 or 4 types at a time. Tease cereal alone can cost $20 for just a couple of boxes. Sugar cost 59 cents for a 5-pound bag. Today, that same bag costs over $4. The old sugar bags were heavy, thick paper, not flimsy plastic. Sugar was used constantly in sweet tea, lemonade, holiday baking, summer preserves, cakes, pies, cookies, homes were filled with big ceramic sugar jars. No one worried about labels or calorie counts. Sugar was a normal part of life. A six-pack of glass bottle Coca-Cola cost 15 cents. Today, it's $6.49. And back then, you paid a 2-cent deposit on each bottle. Kids collected empties from neighbors and cashed them in for snacks or toys. Soda wasn't something families drank every day. It was for special occasions, Friday nights, barbecues, birthday parties, movie nights. Let's build a real 1970 grocery cart. Okay, not an imaginary one. An actual cart built from real prices. 1 gallon of milk, 2 loaves of bread, 1 dozen eggs, 3 pounds of ground beef, 1 pound of coffee, 2 boxes of cereal, £1 bag of sugar, a 6-pack of Coca-Cola, 1 pound of butter, 10 pounds of potatoes, 6 cans of vegetables, 1 whole chicken. In 1970, all of this came to around $10. Today, it costs over $112. That is a price increase of more than 1,000%. People from that era aren't exaggerating when they say everything was cheaper. They're simply remembering a time when the cost of living made sense. But why did everything change? First, inflation. Over 50-plus years, prices rise naturally. Inflation is part of the economic cycle. But inflation alone can't explain everything. Wages grew, but not at the same speed as the rising costs of housing, healthcare, and education. Even if inflation-adjusted numbers look similar, the weight of everyday expenses feels heavier today. Shrinkflation also played a huge role. Companies didn't raise prices, they simply reduced package sizes. Smaller cereal boxes, smaller bread loaves, smaller coffee cans, bags of chips filled mostly with air. Okay, you pay more per ounce without realizing it. Another major shift was supply chains. In 1970, most food sold in your store came from nearby local farms, regional dairies, local bakeries. Today, ingredients travel thousands of miles. Products pass through multiple distributors. Fuel prices, shipping costs, packaging costs, all of it adds layers of expense that didn't exist back then. Let's compare some inflation-adjusted items to see what truly changed. A 62-cent gallon of milk in 1970 equals about $4.70 today. Milk today costs around $4.29, slightly cheaper than inflation predicts. Eggs and coffee are similarly close to inflation-adjusted pricing. But bread today is about 20% more expensive than inflation suggests. Ground beef is around 15% higher. Cereal is roughly 30% higher, and remember, the boxes shrank. So the truth is mixed. Some things stayed in line with inflation. Some rose beyond it. Some shrank dramatically while pretending not to. But perhaps the biggest emotional difference has nothing to do with charts or calculations. It's the feeling of value. In 1970, spending $10 or $20 at the store felt powerful. When you walked out carrying several bags or pushing a full cart, you felt like your money meant something. Today, $100 disappears in seconds. You leave with 2 or 3 small bags and wonder how you spent so much. That emotional contrast is what people mean when they say, times were different. They were. Life wasn't perfect, but everyday essentials felt more attainable. Grocery shopping didn't feel like a financial burden. Families cooked more. People sat together at tables more. And grocery stores themselves had a slow, warm charm that's hard to recreate today. That's what grocery shopping was like in 1970, a time when $20 filled your pantry. When food came in real sizes, when soda bottles were returned for pocket money, when kids raced down aisles begging for cereal with the toy inside, and when every price tag felt fair. Now I want to hear from you. What do you remember about grocery shopping in the 70s? What items did your family buy every week? Which prices shocked you the most? And what simple moments do you miss from that era? Share your memories in the comments. And if you want to see how grocery prices exploded in the 1980s, my next video is coming. 1985 will shock you even more. Thanks for taking this trip down memory lane, prices. I'll see you in the next one.